later. I'm really excited to have my online bestie, Reese Spykerman here. Reese and I met, I feel like it's like I've known her forever, but we met a couple of years ago or more than a couple of years ago. And I couldn't do my business life without Reese. So Reese, thank you for being here. And not only is Reese one of my online besties, she let me experiment my first time around. She was my pre-launch guinea pig. The first time as I was putting some of these processes into play. And I was able to help her on her launch of her last promotion of her Streamlined Product Sales Academy. And I can't believe I said that without I used to have a speech impediment, so I feel like anything with S's sometimes I like mess up. So anyway, I'm glad I said that. So anyway, thank you for coming here, Reese. I'm really appreciative.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, also I get to spend a little while with you, so how could I say no to that?
I know. I looked up plane tickets to see if I could go visit Reese this summer, and I almost passed out at how expensive they are. So one day we'll actually meet in person. For now, we have to do it over Zoom and Voxer.
Yeah, that price was a little shocking.
Right. So tell everyone who hasn't had the pleasure of meeting you, like who you are, like what's your business, what are you up to?
All right, well, you got my name right. I'm Reese, and I'm a consultant for e-commerce business owners. I help them increase their sales through website conversion techniques, through copywriting that makes their customers sit up and take notice, and marketing strategy and planning for their own product launches, their quarterly initiatives, so they can prioritize what they're doing in their marketing without the overwhelm. That's it in a nutshell.
And I think something to point out too, which is you're like a unicorn because you not only know copy, but you know design and website function and how everything works together. And you always amaze me. And we'll mention at the end, but you're opening your doors again to your academy here in just a few weeks. So, but since I helped you on the last launch, can you tell us like a little bit about like how I know we had you ever done pre-launch content before? Was this the first time when you and I started to work on it together? Like, how did it kind of look like in the past?
Yeah, in the past, before our work together, I had launched some really smaller stuff. And I also had done the first round of my group program that you've talked about, which is a mentorship for women in e-commerce businesses. And I didn't do any sort of pre-launch content for those things, especially for that first launch. It was very fly by the seat of my pants for those smaller ones I was talking about. But for that first launch of my group program, I did have a business manager helping with the back end things to help make it less crazy, but I didn't have that pre-launch content. And I have to tell you that the sales emails felt very abrupt to me. Even though we had a launch event, even the launch event, like before the launch, meaning so I had a masterclass, that plus the sales emails that came after just kind of felt like, hey, out of the blue, I've got this thing going. And if I put myself in my potential client or student shoes, it just, maybe I'm projecting too much, but it just felt like very overt and abrupt. And I did do some early bird promotions that helped me get people enrolled, but it wasn't intentional like it was when you and I did our work together.
So when I guess I'm trying to remember how it worked, since I kind of like pitched you on the concept, right, to some degree, but like what drew you in that you knew that this might be a good fit to like work in your business?
That is a great question. And it's kind of a complex answer. And the first part of it is that I am a chronically exhausted person. And it's partly because of my nature as an introvert. Like the world tires me out in general. And I'm also juggling health issues that add to that. So for someone like me, launches feel very stressful. They're intense. In my body, it feels like going from 0 to 80 in a course of a couple days. And that's just so hard on my system and my mental health and my nervous system. And so when you broached me about this, part of my intrigue was not feeling that sudden intensity of, okay, we're suddenly in launch mode. I didn't want to do that to my system. And the other part of why And I said this was a complex answer, but the other part of why is I have always dreaded doing my own content. You and I have had this conversation ad infinitum in, I think I said that right, in Voxer. I do it really well for other people, Bren, but for myself, it's hard. I just really, really, really struggle with it. So your idea intrigued me because it felt like it was going to take the weight off of that, and that like feeling like it's such a slog, it would give me a roadmap to follow. So I don't have to do so much decision making about my content. That in and of itself is hard. Then I got to sit down and write the content. That's hard. And so all of that was very appealing to me.
It's super hard to do it for yourself. Like, I don't care if you do this for a living, right? Like, you and I spend all day, every day in content and copy. Obviously, I don't like do any of the website stuff like you do, but being in this world, and then when you have to do it for yourself, it's so hard to think like outside the box. And I think it's the, well, not even outside the box, it's thinking like you're kind of, what's that expression, like you can't see things from inside the bottle or something like that. I always, for some reason, I butcher that, but basically it's hard to see with your own stuff. So can you tell the listeners a little bit, like, what did the experience look like when we came in? And like I said, you were my guinea pig of us, like me figuring out the system when we worked together. Like, how was the experience from your end? Like, what did we do? What did it feel like?
Mm. Well, you kind of alluded to some of it, which is basically you helped me do the work that I usually do for other people, but struggle to do for myself. And so what that looked like was we started out by thinking like my potential client or student, what would be their concerns or myths they believe, objections they may have, desires they have. And so before we even got down to the more creating content of stuff, that was so useful to me, Bren, when we sat down to talk through all that, because you helped me develop more empathy for their point of view, which I just was way too close to see. So it first and foremost, when we sat down to think through, and you had some not easy questions for me, where like I had to really dig deep and think about what what might make them not want to come into my program, what things do they believe that would prevent them from it, or what do they really want for themselves. And when you helped me think about that, it puts so much into perspective for me. And then we worked together. You took it from like that big picture, kind of bird's eye view look, but that's super important. I'm not being dismissive of it. And then you sat down to create a content plan that addressed as many of those things as possible. But it also, this is the cool part. I mean, you know me pretty well. We're friends, but I think for anyone else you work with, like you spend this time trying to understand who they are as people. What are some things they like on a more casual level, as well as like, what are some really hardcore beliefs that they have about their industry that they want to make sure they share? And you pulled all those things out of me. And it was like marrying that first part of the work, that big picture stuff, with those smaller stories, those smaller angles and hooks. And somehow you magically, and I know it's not just magical, I know you spent so much time on it, took those two things and then drafted this outline for me that we kind of went back and forth on of, okay, this email is going to address this objection. And here's the story angle we're coming in on it, like a little story from your own life that relates to what they might be feeling. And don't forget to mention, like, one of the other cool things you did for me was you helped me utilize content I already had. Like I've had a library of Facebook Lives, and I had other old emails, and you helped say, how can we bring this stuff in instead of just constantly reinventing the wheel? And somehow you took all these things and you turned them into a content plan for me that when I sat down each week, I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm going to write. And so it was almost, I don't want to say it was like writing to a template. That's not it, but it felt a lot like I was sitting down, and instead of like starting from scratch, I was kind of filling blanks of a really solid foundation you made for me.
Right. So I love what you said too about how how like we were able to repurpose things from the past, and I think that's part of it too. It's like, okay, how can we like tie in the old with what we need to say in the new, while also, you know, having your personality, but really thinking about our client first. So it's almost like stepping into the box of like, what is our client thinking, and then being able to kind of like step outside the box and go, okay, now how can, as content and marketing, how can we kind of get this information back over to the client? So I love that. And I was actually thinking about that this morning, how we went back and used like a bunch of, not a bunch, but like some of your old lives. And because I think too, for you, and going back to what you said a little bit ago, is like, okay, you know, you only have so much energy and so much, you know, like there's only so much you can give. So it's like, okay, instead of having to go and do all of these brand new lives or doing things, can we get people to start listening to you in a way that doesn't feel overwhelming too? And I think that's part of it too, right? There's a lot of people that'll tell you all these different things to do, but if it becomes overwhelming, I don't care what it is, you're never going to do it. So I loved how you pointed that out. So I think we already kind of touched on this, but you know, once you had that plan and you were able to just go and implement it, like what was your feelings during those 5 or 6 weeks before the launch when you had all of this?
So the biggest thing I felt honestly was relief. Um, and I also felt excitement and I wasn't expecting to. And I think I really want to drive home for people that, you know, you're listening to someone who loves doing her programs. I absolutely am passionate and love the teaching that I do. I freaking hate the launching around it. Like there, and so for me to feel excited about that is a colossal thing. It's a big deal. And so you alleviated the stress. And I also felt like, all right, I'm taking really good care of my audience. I'm creating connections with them. Um, and then my launch itself didn't feel like this whole big looming thing that I was going into, like, oh, hey, suddenly buy from me. It was more like we were leading people on a journey to that point. And so it wasn't so much of a shock for them or for me and for my system. And it it just it freed up so much of my mental bandwidth to focus on other things, like for example, the masterclass presentation that I had to make. So the big thing again is how did I feel or during those weeks? I felt a lot of relief. And one of the things that was really cool that I want to bring up is many of the emails that you helped kind of outline the topics and all, and then we'd send them out. My reply rate was really high. It was higher than I had gotten in email reply rates up before then. And so that told me that we were on to something. And it's not just a vanity metric here, like, oh, people are replying. When people reply, they become more invested, right? Because they've just made, like, people talking about micro commitments, but they
Mhm.
basically have spent, you know, maybe 20, 40 seconds or so typing out something to you that they could have spent doing something else. And so they just invested in you a little bit more when they replied. So that was pretty awesome to get all those email replies.
I love that. Yeah, and it opens up, and I think that's a big thing of when teaching pre-launching and helping people with pre-launching. To me, it's not like, okay, we're not just in it to like sell to, I mean, so obviously our goal is to make sales, right? But for me, it's like, okay, how can we open up and start having discussions with our audience around what we're selling, why we're selling it? Is this really a good fit for them? And when we're able to do that and we have space like before the launch, and I think that's the other nice thing too, is that, like I always say, like once you're in launch mode, it's like do or die, right? Like you have these emails, you have this cart closing, there's things, but you're with the space. It's like, okay, great. I'm getting all of these replies. I can actually start discussions around my sales and really see if this is going to be a really good fit for someone or maybe not, or just to meet someone. You never know too, even if that particular person doesn't turn into your buyer now, you never know that they could be part of your pipeline for the next time. So I think it works in so many different ways. I know the other thing that you mentioned that was super helpful is that that your sales calls you thought went a little bit easier than by doing the pre-launch. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. One of the things I noticed is, and my team and I did like a debrief afterward. And going into the sales calls, it was like people came into it with a decision already made. Not all of them, but a lot of them, there was a general feeling of they're ready to go and they just are kind of sorting out a couple questions they had in their mind. So I noticed that people were coming into the sales calls highly, highly pre-qualified. And by that, I just mean within themselves. Like they almost had already made that decision. And I remember I had one sales call. It was so jarring to me. Not in a bad way, but she, after 10 minutes, it was like, yep, I'm good to go. You know, when I told her all about what it entails and the investment and everything. And I was kind of like, I'd been trained in the school of you gotta push their pain points for 45 minutes. And I just don't like that. That's not how I operate. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to push anyone into anything. But I was floored that after 10 minutes, she's like, sign me up. And I remember I was so not expecting this that I think I got on Voxer with you and I'm like, I think I might have screwed this up because I tried to drag the call out longer just because it was so unnatural to what I had been doing before and trained in before. But there was just this ease in the sales calls. People were curious and I was too. I didn't go into the calls feeling like I need to hit a certain close rate. I just went into it like, we're going to see if this is a good fit. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. It's fine. Either way, like seriously, I'm at that point now. But I'm not sure on the number, Brenna. So I'm going to go conservative here, but I think my close rate for the calls was something like 80%. And
Wow.
yeah, I have never had conversations with potential customers go just that easily and in flow. And I think a lot of part of it is because of how they had been following in the weeks before and how they felt connected to me and how they felt seen by the things that we had produced for them content wise.
Makes a huge difference. And as someone who's done a lot of discovery calls, there's a huge difference of going into a call where you're trying to, I know like early on, like I know sometimes I'd feel like I was trying to convince someone, not convince them, right? But I'm trying to like, do the whole salesy thing. And it's a whole different experience when you get on a call and you're like, okay, this is what I can do for you. This is how it's going to go. And they say yes. And like you said, you're like, oh, okay, this is so different. I know I remember the first time it happened, it was like, oh, like I don't have to like talk for 45 minutes. And I think that's exactly what it is that you want people to come into, and it depends too, like not every pre-launch, not every, depending on what you're selling. Reese is selling a high-end group experience. So it depends, like not everyone I've worked does have discovery calls, but when you do and you're able to go into it and have people and have your pre-launch do all of this heavy lifting for you, it makes a huge difference, like you said, in your close rates. And I think your confidence levels, right? Like you kind of know you've put everything out there and you're not having, at least I think that's how I feel a lot of times, is like my confidence is kind of boosted a little bit during when something like that happens.
Yeah, for sure. And so that is true. Like, I think that an underlying but really important benefit of the work we did together and that you helped me with was the kind of ease and confidence it gave me going into my launch event, that masterclass, as well as the discovery calls afterward.
Good. And I just looked down. I saw Sabrina is here. Hi, Sabrina Blank. So thank you for tuning in.
Hello. I'm so excited she's here. She's one of the women graduating from the current group, and I absolutely freaking adore her. I'm so glad she's in your group too.
Oh, I'm glad. That's a nice part too. Not only are we friends, but we share other mutual friends too. Like our worlds collide. So so can you tell us a little bit, like how did the last launch go in terms of results? I know you said that you closed 80% of the sales call. Things were easier. Like in some of like the tangible numbers, like what did that look like for you?
Yeah. The one you helped me with, so that was my second launch. I'm not the kind of person who keeps good track of her numbers, but I want to say it was almost twice like the amount of revenues of the prior launch, or maybe you're right, 45%. This is terrible. I'm good at math when I got to do it for clients, but not right now. Anyway, it was substantially more. But what was really meaningful to me was how easy those sales calls were. and just people coming into it with that decision already made, it alleviated a lot of anxiety around this launch. And I also felt like the people who joined my program, I felt like this the first time around, but in the second time around, it's just, they came into it with a lot of readiness. You know, I could just sense that energy from that program from the get-go, and the group that is finishing up right now. So I just mean in general, this second launch, everything from how I felt, my experience with people on the phone calls, even how I showed up in my masterclass, the energy I brought to that, it impacted and affected all that completely different than my first one.
Yeah, I think too, like what you said right there is super important that, and I don't know if I've ever thought about this before, even though we've talked for hours and hours, is like the fact that the people came in ready as well, like a different level of excitement. And I think that's the difference of going into a sales call where you're not feeling like you're trying to talk someone into something. Like they're already pre-sold. You're just kind of getting on to do that formality. And then because they are pre-sold, they're that much more excited about what's about to come within your program, right? So
Yeah, it's like an energetic inertia that goes on there.
and now I know you've been on your own. Well, of course, we've talked and supporting each other with this current launch. But can you tell me a little bit um, about how the stuff we worked on before, how it's helped you this time around?
Yeah. So I will be launching again, I want to say in a little less than 2 weeks. Okay. And I went back about a couple months ago to the work that we did together, right? Because I got all these copies and Google Docs up the wazoo. And I looked it over. I'm like, look, I think that people's desires or the things that they're concerned about, what myths they believe, all that's work we did. I don't think it really changed much. So what I did is I thought, all right, well, how could I take the same concepts and just rework the stories or angles around them? So once again, the work that we did in the prior like pre-launch helped me with this versions of the pre-launch because it saved me from having to do that decision making. I already do too much of that in my business as it is. And I knew it was a solid framework that worked pretty well from us in the past, and I could just sit and kind of tweak it. And so that, again, I keep coming back to the word relief. It gave me both relief and confidence because I didn't have to think about all this stuff. It was already there.
Oh, I love it. And something that Sabrina said, I'm looking down at my phone to read the comments. She said, I can say from the customer side, I felt more enabled to make a good decision for Reese's program because of the pre-sale. And I think what
There you
amazing,
go.
yeah, right there. Like, and that's it coming from the customer side. And that's what I love about like, when I decided to go down this direction, I think that's what I love because it's not only better for the seller, if you will, for you, right? It's also a better experience for our people that are coming in. And that's what I really love about it. So if would you, I know as a friend, you'd be hard pressed to say no, but would you recommend me? Like, how would you feel if someone came to you and said, should I hire Brenna or should I do Brenna's program where she's going to teach me how to do this? What would you say?
No,
Don't do it.
don't run. I'm kidding. Oh my God. I hope someone didn't walk in at just this moment. So, all right, look, it's like my dream, and it has been, to hire you to be in my business almost full time. And I know you don't want that kind of job, and I'm hesitant to say this, Bren, but I think I've already said this in another review for you, but I don't want like everyone else taking you off the market. But I'm kidding. In reality, yes, for real. If you are going to be launching something, I've gone over in this live all the ways that doing my pre-launch with Brenna has made my life easier, less stressful. And for me personally, those are the biggest benefits. But I also think that what Brenna touched upon is huge about the customer side of things, because that's where part of my stress comes from. I want people to feel really taken care of. It's how I am. I'm one of those people that I probably frankly care too much, and it makes me do things more slowly. It means I'm not going to scale as fast because I want everyone to feel really taken care of. And your model makes it so that, as attested to by Sabrina, who took my program, she felt that sense of pre-care, and that things that she might have going on in her mind or wondering about were being addressed. And that's just, it's so empathetic. It's such a really kind and compassionate way to treat our clients and customers. And so if you share those values that Brenna and I both do, and you want to feel less stressed, you want to feel more confident, you want to feel relief, you want to make fewer decisions, you want to know your people are taken care of really well, then 100% hire Brenna to do your pre-launch. That's it.
Thank you. Yes. And so if you're watching and you're someone who's like, oh my gosh, I want this for my business, I want to be able to implement it, I have a program that's coming up here. There's some spots left that starts April 21st. It's my beta round where I'm actually the process that I worked with Reese on, I'm going to be showing you how to do for your own business so that you can do it again and again, step by step, on a repeatable process. So, and I want to make sure, Reese, that you tell us, because you have an amazing masterclass. I got to see a little bit of the behind the scenes coming up for your sales product. Well, no, I'm sorry. It's the 2 seconds for the sale is the class that you have coming up. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, but you put me on the spot here because you didn't tell me you'd be asking this question. So let's see
sorry.
how I do. No, it's totally fine. I'm teasing you, but I have been working on it all day long. I'm totally tanked. It's called 2 Seconds to the Sale. It's a free masterclass. It's a 3-day event, and it basically gives people who have product-based businesses a step-by-step plan to sustainable product sales. And I help remove the overwhelm of feeling like you've got to do all the things and posting 10 times a week and hanging out on TikTok and God knows what else. And instead, we're just going to tweak what you already do. And so it's not about doing more. It's about doing what you're doing in a way that's going to make you far more resonant with your potential customers. And if anyone watching would like to get in on that, we, I think, are still taking signups for the next few days, and you can get in on that at designbyreese.com/masterclass. And I would love to see you there.
Good. Well, I will put that link in here in the comments when we're done. And I just want to say thank you, Reese. I appreciate you so much. I know how busy you are coming on and talking about the pre-launch process on this live today. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
It was my complete pleasure. I got to spend time with you. I got to brag about you. And I will just want to reiterate, anyone watching, like, yes, Brenna is my friend, but she is also one of hands down the smartest people I know. And if I could hire her to be in my business full time, I would in a heartbeat, not just because she's my friend, because she's brilliant at what she does. So go and take her pre-launch.
Now I'm going to get all teary.
Oh, you're going to do the crying. Okay. It's all right.
Just a little bit. So it's been a long day already. So hearing those words, I appreciate it. So thank you. And thank you for everyone who watched or watches later. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone who watched. Bye.